Well, hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Cutting Room Floor. My name's Larry. I'm joined by Pastor Taylor.
It's good to be back. We had a little holiday break.
Yeah.
Good to be back at it.
Yeah, Wes and I hopped on last week, and we didn't know if we'd remember how to do this, but we think we did.
I did have that thought. I'm like, hopefully this is like riding a bike, where you just pick up the skill that you've known for so long, but
the muscle memory is still there.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, so it was a good break from it, and it's good to be back. It was also good. I don't know if you had the same experience. People coming up and saying, "Hey, when's the Cutting Room Floor coming back?" I'm like,
yeah,
well, that's exciting.
Yeah, we had a couple people. Yeah, more than a couple people asked me. I'm like, "Hey, are you guys still doing that?" I'm like, "Yes, just we got to make it through Christmas because there's a whole lot going on there."
Yeah,
so it's good to be back.
Yeah, and so we've been in this series called Together, and last week Wes and I started off talking about part one of that, which was really just kind of this overview of how we're meant to do life together. This past week at the Cape Coral campus, you and Pastor Wes preached together about mentorship.
Yeah.
And this has all been through the lens of David's life. So it was about David and Samuel in that role. And one of the things that we emphasized at all the campuses was that you need to be mentored, but also seek to mentor. And I don't know if did you guys like feel the moment of that? Because as I was watching back that sermon, watching you and Wes do that together, I thought was just a picture of what we were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So to go behind not the cutting room floor even, but kind of even before that. So when we were doing the schedule for January, we had said that we wanted to do this one together. And truthfully, a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today on the cutting room floor is from kind of this conversation, some of these elements, because we had said that our relationship, and Wes talks about it, and I do too, but we didn't get to dive too deep into it during the sermon just for time's sake. But so much of our relationship is a mentor and a reverse mentor. And so one of the things I want to stress is a lot of the time we can think of mentor as like, oh, okay, so I have to find someone who's older than me. Like that's kind of the default. I got to find someone who's at least older than and your age.
Right.
And I just don't. We just don't think that's the case. We think that there's mentoring that can happen from both ways. And so we had said we wanted to do this one together because so much of our relationship is about that. It's about this, yes, being mentored. Obviously, me being mentored by Wes, but then Wes will say often like, "Hey, there's things that insights you'll have, or things that you'll do, or things that you're have experience in that helps him alongside this process too." And so that was really cool to be able to do that together. We felt like it was an appropriate way to like talk about mentorship and a good picture to paint. And funny enough, we were even saying in writing it, we were like, we wish we had more time. We already go over anyways. That's a whole other story over time. But
we don't have to go there. We don't have to go there.
But we had said we wish we had more time too, because there was so much of our relationship that not that we're better than anyone, nothing like that at all. But just this beauty that we found in mentoring and reverse mentoring, where it's not just like gotta find the oldest person you can find and listen to them, but like no, there's something for no matter your age to learn too, the opposite way.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we brought out in that message, and I think is exemplified in what you've been talking about there, is the humility it takes to be in those relationships. Because I definitely saw that looking at you and Wes doing that together, but that's kind of our whole team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like when you have the humility to lay ego aside,
absolutely.
Age doesn't matter in that. Like
no,
that's not the thing. It's the insights and the gifts and the wiring that God has given. Like I learn a lot from you, and hopefully you pick up something from me somewhere along the way. But like I think we can. We've sought to lay aside ego to the point that we're in this together, and we're meant to do it together.
Yeah, absolutely, and even for our teaching team.
Yeah.
Like so, Wes said this at one of our, or he said it at All About Grace. He was telling people. So I lead our teaching team, and before this role I was in, it was the youth pastor was leading teaching team, who was also the youngest in the room.
Yeah,
which is like when you talk to other churches and other places,
you
paint this picture, it doesn't make sense to them.
Yeah,
it's like why?
Yeah,
and I would say it only works not from anything I do by any means. The reason it works is because of the humility of the team. to be able to say, no, it's not, it's not me trying to hop in and go, oh, here we go. Now I'm leading the team. It's very much the humility of everyone to go, no, there's like, we can learn, we can all learn from each other.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're right. That's what makes it go all across the board in all these relationships. There's, I mean, every person on staff, I could go through them all. And there's things that I learn from each of them. Every time we sit down, every conversation we have, every time we're together, there's things I learn from each of them. And I, like you said, I hope there's things that they learn from me in the process too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's humility that makes this whole thing go.
Yeah.
And even in relationships in general,
Yeah.
so I'm writing the sermon for this Sunday, and there's an element of humility with the relationship we're going to talk about next this coming week.
He's not going to give anything away.
Not giving anything away.
That's for next week.
Yeah, I'm not giving anything away, but there's elements of humility in all of this. There's humility in week one.
Yeah.
Of even acknowledging I need a team.
Yeah.
I need others around me. I can't do this alone. That takes massive humility.
Yeah.
Because the pride in us, our ego wants to say, I don't need anyone. I got this.
Yeah.
Because admitting we need people around us is also admitting weakness. And that's okay. Like here, like it's not a bad thing. But it's admitting that there's a need.
Yeah.
It's admitting that there's something missing, And
I think we'll end up saying the same thing when we get to the truth telling part. And like Wes and I joked last week that's where this is going to get a little less fun. Like everybody's fine with saying, "Oh yeah, I need a mentor, I need a friend." Oh whoa, I don't know, but so you definitely need humility there,
absolutely,
and in the role of the truth teller.
But
again, that's 2 weeks from now. We don't want to give all that away.
Yeah, lots of good conversations coming.
Yeah, lots of stuff coming your way. So when you think back over your life, and you're in this unique position here on our staff team in that you're a lifer here.
Right.
You've been around Grace Church since what, third grade?
Third grade, was when I started attending.
So what role has mentorship played in your spiritual development, your leadership development?
it is all first credit and all credit goes to God, and glory goes to Him. He's the one who transforms. He's the one who redeems. He's the one who does the work. With that in this hand, let me also say I'm the person, pastor, friend, dad, husband, and so on that I am because of the people at Grace Church.
Yeah,
that's just the reality. Growing up, even I came here in third grade, and so my relationship with Grace Church has always been there's always someone leading and guiding me. I mean, think about it. When you're a third grader, and back then Heather was leading Grace Place. The time this brand new thing that had started at this church. I had a shepherd, Melody, who I would meet with weekly, and then be in our small group, and she would lead me. And then going through that, Heather was my youth pastor, and so Heather became this guide, this person for me through my teenage years. And then Taylor Foley had that role when I was my senior year and then in college. And then when I started part-time here on staff at youth, like Taylor was guiding me in that. Wes and George guiding me in pastoral ministry when that really became refined, guiding me in teaching and preaching and giving me opportunities to do that. I've always, and that's just the staff. I mean, we could go on and on with the many individuals at Grace Church, the people that are on staff that have walked ahead and have helped me and guided me. But my relationship with Grace Church has always been, there's been at least one person here, and it's always been more than one, but multiple people here that have been a guide, have been, like we define mentor as, who are at least one step ahead and had something to offer me. And the potential piece, I mean, for me, that's been the story. Yes, it's life skills, and yes, it's opportunity, but all of these people that I named, and even more who were mentoring and a step ahead of me, they all called out that hidden potential.
Yeah,
I can't say enough about that piece.
And that's that first piece we see in David's relationship with Samuel.
Yeah.
Like it's just such a weird story. Like
it is. It is when you think about it. Yeah.
Like all of his brothers are trotted out to be anointed king, and his dad doesn't think to invite him to the party.
No, he's busy out in the field.
Yeah, none of these are. This isn't the one. This isn't the one.
Yeah.
Samuel's like, are there any others? Well, they're still the youngest. And we went into. Like that's a loaded word. It's not just the youngest. It means unimportant and weakest. Like unimportant to the point that your father doesn't want to take a chance that you might become king?
Yeah.
Because that's just impossible.
Because like he had written it off.
Yeah.
Like think about that. Like it wasn't even I wish you could hear tone in the Bible.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Like I wish when people say
Yeah.
like when you
Sometimes
read the
it's
words,
like a text message.
Yes,
like, I
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, you can't read emotion in a text
Yeah.
message. And sometimes it's hard to read that when the author doesn't define it
Yeah.
in the Bible. But I have to imagine when Jesse says this, it's kind of with like a shock or a disgust.
They're
Kind of like
still the youngest
I mean,
one,
they're
but
still the youngest, but
we don't need to invite him.
right, very much like surely
No.
this will not be the one, and so yeah, there's this like his own dad who you would think would know him most and best, has written him off of this. There's no chance it's him,
Yeah.
and yet Samuel says, "Well, look, bring him in."
Yeah.
Which is an incredible thing when you think about the whole sequence. I mean, imagine, because you've already said no to all the other brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably all just hanging out there.
Yeah.
And then Samuel says, go get David.
They're all like, wait, he passed us over.
Yeah. And they're waiting for their baby brother, which for those who have siblings, you know how that goes, right?
Not going to end well.
Exactly. I mean, just the whole scene is just wild.
Yeah.
But Samuel, he calls that thing out of David that his dad couldn't see, and I'm gonna go ahead and imagine that David couldn't fully see yet either.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. The Bible doesn't talk anything about that, but
Yeah.
but at least from my own experience, I'd have a hard time believing that he was sitting there going like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a king."
Yeah. He's not out there sulking like, Dad, do you even invite me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Samuel sees this hidden potential in David, and that's one of the things that we brought out is mentors see that. And when we seek to be a mentor, that's one of the things we're on the lookout for is calling that out in people, like the things that they can't see in themselves. And we talked about there's seasons to this, and for David, Samuel, somebody that he goes back to over and over for refuge, and mentors shift and take different roles in different seasons. When we were talking about the refuge part, I was talking about when I was in the ordination process, the person that was assigned to be my mentor, like we had to check all the boxes and do this. He did all that admirably. His name was Bob. And then I get done with seminary, so that relationship's supposed to be over. But the night before my ordination reviews, I'm losing my mind. When I'm isolated, I'm in a hotel room by myself, and I'm like, "This is good." And he knows and he texts me and says, "Are you doing okay?" And I just let it all loose. And he said, "I'm on my way." So he drives like a half hour, picks me up at this hotel, takes me out to dinner, and it was refuge. Awesome. It was refuge. We didn't go back over my written work or anything. He was just like, "You got this."
Right.
And that's where mentors provide that refuge.
Oh,
and he was that, and that was a great,
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And the hidden potential piece, I want to go back to that real quick, because I think there's a couple things that we didn't get to really camp on in the sermon that I want to make sure to say here. The first is that we see mentors see the hidden potential in others by staying close to God and listening for his nudge. We see that in Samuel's story. So the reason that Samuel sees that hidden potential in David is because God says that profound thing to Samuel.
Yeah.
Tells him,
you're looking at the outward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, tells him you're looking at the outside, I look at the inside, I'm looking at the heart. I reject this one.
So now Samuel's in that place where he can.
Yes. And so this profound word from God ends up allowing Samuel, staying close with God, listening to him and following through, allows Samuel to then see it in David. Mm-hmm. When if he was judging by his own rubric or his own scorecard, it probably would have been the first brother.
Yeah.
Who just looked great.
Almost immediate.
Sure. Yeah, almost immediate.
Samuel's like, "Oh yeah, surely this."
Yeah. And so for if we want to apply that to us today, it means that we have to be walking with God closely. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that to say moral perfection. That's a relational statement. Mm-hmm. That's a relational statement of walking together with God closely, meaning spending time with him, being in his presence, listening to him, talking to him. I think that's the first thing when it comes to seeing hidden potential. This isn't like I got to shore up my own radar and find it. It's a lot of this is like, no, I got to walk with God and listen for his nudge when it comes to these relationships I have in my life. That's the first thing. The second thing with seeing hidden potential is we have to see people with promise and possibility. And that can be really hard.
Yeah.
That can be really hard sometimes. I'm just going to be real. And hopefully listening, you find that real too. Of there are sometimes people that we see and we're like, I just don't see it with them.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. It's not there.
Yeah.
And we have to see people with promise and possibility in order to see what potential they could have. It's seeing them not just for who they are, but for who they could be. It's why I get so disheartened when I hear only negative talk about millennials, which is my generation, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. And this goes up too. Like, hear me. Like, when people bash on Gen X or, the OK Boomer stuff, like, not quite a fan.
I'm a Zennial.
You're a Zennial, so you're hanging out everywhere. Yeah. So like I'm not a fan of that either. But as family pastor, when I work so often with families and people 0 to 25, it saddens me to hear so much of the negative talk about those generations.
Yeah.
Because what we are doing is we're viewing them for what they're not and not for who they could be. And if we want to see a generation emerge that loves the Lord and continues on in the faith, it's going to take people seeing them for who they could be. For seeing them through the lens that God sees them with potential and possibility. And so I just think that's a huge part of this too. It's seeing the gifting in a kid, and even if it's a glimmer of it, it's affirming that in that kid. Of you are a fantastic teacher of God's word. You don't even know how I'm thinking of a real life example of a young man who spent time in youth ministry who would teach. And I remember affirming that gift in him. And he's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yes." I'm like, you have no idea how the Lord speaks through you when you speak. And was he super polished and he have it all together? No, he didn't. But guess what? I tried my best to see the potential possibility in him. Yeah. And I think that's such a thing that we have to do. Well, it's all across generations. Yeah. Hear me. Yeah, I'm not saying like only see it in them and don't see it in the older generation. We got to see it in those too. But man, I hear a lot of negative stuff about about the younger generations, and we got to see potential and possibility in them.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to do at Grace is provide that safe place for young people to even explore that potential and possibility in themselves. But what you're saying is we need to be calling that out in people and affirming it. Like when I came home from a week of church camp with this wild hair that I wanted to be a pastor, like it'd have been really easy for people in my church to be like, no.
Absolutely.
My first pastor's name was Pam, and she called out that potential and possibility and affirming, I see this, but here's the stuff that God's going to use in ways that you couldn't even imagine.
Absolutely. And it's not devoid of discipleship, meaning it's not devoid of the growth and maturing work that has to happen, even for some of those things to come to fruition. It's not devoid of that. It's not absent of that, but it's in addition to that. Yeah. Too often I think we jump to like, well, you gotta, you're to this and you're to that. And it's like, well, no, what if it's like, hey, I see this in you and you might not see it in yourself. Yeah. Which is why I want to help you with these things.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone who's listening, who's agreeing with all this? They've listened to the sermon, they've read the scripture, and they want a mentor in their lives. What would you say to them about how to seek out a mentor?
Yeah. I think you got to identify your, and I'll kind of walk through what we talked about in the sermon, but in a different kind of way. So you got to figure out what you need a mentor in. And it might be life in general. It might just be like, I need someone to just tell me which way is up. and so that might be the answer, or it might be something really refined. But then you got to find the right person that has that. I would say someone that you probably already have a little bit of trust with.
Yeah, it's kind of odd just to walk up to somebody.
Yeah. Like
you're my mentor. Right?
Yeah, exactly. If you've never had a conversation with a person, that's not probably the person to make your mentor.
I'll buy that. Okay.
Companion, different story. I do think you can begin to form a friendship, but for mentor, it's probably someone you have a little bit of trust with, only because of this. Because in mentorship, it's the humility factor. If you got to be willing to receive help and also listen. Yeah. And so if there's not trust built, it's like, you're probably not gonna. You're gonna be less willing to be open, and you're gonna be less willing to receive what it is they're sharing with you. So you gotta find the right person, And then I think the hardest part is having the conversation. It's starting that. And I think for people who are kind of caught up in that, I think people get tripped up on the word mentor.
Okay.
Which is funny because we're trying to define it as like someone who's a step ahead, but I think to quote Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, the great prophet Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibility, and when we hear the word mentor, I think sometimes we make that title too big, and it scares us.
Yeah.
Because we think of our imperfection, we think of our, oh man, I got some experience in this area, but I don't do it perfectly. And I think sometimes we get wigged out by that word. And so if that freaks you out, or if you're thinking that's going to freak someone else out, there's other words like being a coach for you, being a guide for you, being So I don't get too understand what a mentor really is. My goal would be to redefine the word. Of it's someone who's at least one step ahead of you. It does not mean someone who is perfect.
And that's something that is baked into the recovery community.
It is,
but I hear that a lot. If you're one step ahead, you have something to offer.
Yes.
So I think, let me ask the same question, but for somebody that might be feeling this nudge, because we said you need to also seek to mentor, and they may be thinking that same thing.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm supposed to do this, but what do I really have to offer?
That's exactly it.
Like they hear you talk about like Pastor Wes and Pastor George. Like, well, okay, sure, but I don't have anything like that to offer. What would you say to somebody about who's struggling with the idea of being a mentor?
I think that sometimes we don't. We're so focused looking at what our next growth is that we don't celebrate the growth that has been. So. I was just having I have this conversation a lot with young adults, which is awesome because a lot of them are former students of mine in youth ministry. And so I've seen the growth from 8th grade to 21.
Yeah.
But all the conversations I have with them, they're so focused on that they're not at this next step, that they haven't bought a house yet, that they're not in their career, that they're it's all these different things.
You're like, dude, I remember you in middle school. When
exactly,
you were a wreck.
exactly. I remember when you were
you've come so far.
Yeah, I remember when you were like just crying because I got you out in Foursquare. Yeah. And look at you. You're you have your own business now. It's incredible.
Foursquare is cutthroat.
Although Foursquare does get intense. Yes, I understand crying when I got you out. I would slam the ball really hard. Anyways, so there's this idea of we always want to grow. Some people just we're wired of we're focused on what's next. And sometimes we think, oh no, I have nothing to offer because I haven't reached this thing yet. I haven't hit this thing. I haven't hit that mark. I don't pray twice a day for 7 days. I don't understand everything in the Bible. I don't only journal 3 days a week. I'm not at this step yet. I haven't had this much money saved. All these things we say, I'm not there yet. But what we have to understand is while you're not there yet, you've taken 15 steps of growth from where you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
That's such a good word.
And there's somebody
who's back where you were.
Bingo, who's back where you were a year or 2 or 3 ago.
Yeah.
And so while you're not there yet, you've walked 10 steps.
Yeah.
And there's someone who's 10 steps behind that needs you to help you walk with them those first 10 steps.
I remember having this strange realization. I was 20 when I first became a pastor, and for so long I was the youngest pastor in any given room where I was seeking out all these people. And there was this turn where people started calling me and asking questions. I'm like, and I had to wrestle with that, realizing that it wasn't about age anymore. It was about experience and faithfulness and fruitfulness. And starting to be okay with that in my own skin. Like it's not about age. I have something to offer, even as I seek to be mentored and coached, that I've been there, done that on a few things.
Absolutely. That's been, I would even speak from my own experience too and say, I think that's been some of the growth I've experienced over the last couple of years. Because it was one thing, I was 21 when I started full-time here in youth ministry. And that was a little different because I was a middle school pastor, and I'm very similar. I'm like, okay, so, I've got 10 years on you. So I don't know lick about life yet, but I know about middle school. And so let me help you with that. And then it was, I don't know lick about life yet, but I can help in middle and high school. And for me in this new role, it's been the confidence of going, think about the age that I'm preaching to.
Yeah.
Like, if we broke it down the percentage, I don't know what the percentage is, but like, there's definitely like the majority that I'm preaching to are older and have more life experience than I do. The vast majority.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was early on. I dipped in this insecurity
Sure.
of like, who am I
Yeah.
to stand up there and talk about the Bible and talk about ways to live and talk about that. I had that for a little bit, but then thanks to good mentors that I have, thanks to my therapist,
Thank God for
God's
the
discernment.
therapist,
Thank
yes.
God for therapist. I had therapy today. That's why my voice is so calm right now. But thanks to all these things, I was able to understand that truth you described.
Yeah.
Of like, no, while I'm not, I've got my own set of,
Yeah.
I'm not here yet in all these areas.
Right.
Oh my gosh, and being a dad and being a husband and financial and spiritual. I have my own list of like, I'm not here yet and I want to get here. But I've understood that what I'm going to talk about is my experience, the last 10 steps.
Yeah.
And
there's
helping
someone
people
out
come
there
along.
who's in the spot you were in 10 steps ago.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
I think that's what we were trying to get across to
Yeah.
folks in seeking to be a mentor is
Yeah.
that there's somebody who's exactly where you used to be.
Yes.
And you have something to speak into their life. And as you continue walking closely with Jesus, you can pour into them in an incredible way
Yes.
and call out that potential, even when you don't feel equipped to that task.
Absolutely. And when we define mentor that way, what it does also is it widens the scope, and you do have something to offer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's easy to sit there and go, oh, I'm not a mentor. When we think of it as like moral perfection,
Yeah.
I gotta have it all figured out.
Yeah,
Well, obviously, all of us would be
Yeah,
eliminated.
the guru sitting on the mountaintop.
Yes,
We're not talking
yes.
about that.
Yes, we joked about Yoda to start, but
Yeah.
it's not. These aren't Yoda situations.
Yeah.
You just need someone who's just a few steps ahead of you,
Yeah.
who can help you walk your next steps that they've already walked.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of it. I think we see these relationships all over, and I just want to encourage people to say you do have something to offer.
Yeah.
What's your life experience? What's your skill? What's your trade? What's your passion? What's your gifts? What's your story?
Yeah.
Ask yourself that question. Think about your life story and think like, oh my goodness, I have experience and I've
Yeah.
even something we haven't talked about this too much. Even something as profound as like, I've walked through pain. I've walked through sorrow. I've walked through grief. And I'm 10 steps ahead of someone who's just now enduring that.
Yeah.
That's what's so beautiful about Grief Share.
Yeah.
Our Grief Share group, because it's that.
Yeah.
I mean, people will take this multiple times, and what's beautiful is that they might not be out of the valley of the shadow of death yet, meaning they're still walking through it, but they're a little bit further down, further along the valley than someone else.
Yeah.
And what we see so beautifully in Grief Share, and Amy does such a beautiful job leading this group, is we see these relationships form where there's that kind of mentorship too. There's mentorship in hey,
Yeah.
I've been there. I
Yeah.
know your pain. I've walked that. Let me continue to walk with you and let me encourage you and help you.
Yeah.
Because I was there a year ago.
Yeah. And I think it could be something as profound as that to as something as simple as like you mentioned, finances.
Yeah.
Like I've seen with like Financial Peace University over and over, someone who, they may not be Dave Ramsey and have, a phenomenal portfolio, but they used to be up to their eyeballs in debt.
Yes.
And they've pulled out of that and they can start coaching others on how to do a budget.
Yeah.
And like that whole gamut of things, like you do have something to offer. So I think it's why it's so important that we seek to be mentored and to mentor.
Absolutely.
Any parting shots on this? Anything else on the cutting room floor?
No, this has been good. I think I think this Truth Teller has its own kind of. We're going to talk about that in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Truth Teller has its own ability to kind of say, "Oh, this sounds too hard. I'm like, I'm out of this."
Yeah.
But this one I think is the easiest to write yourself off in a I'm not qualified way of being a mentor, or the easiest to write it off is like, there's nobody out there for me.
Yeah.
Like,
Or I don't deserve a mentor.
one.
Yeah.
No one's going to want to mentor me. And so I think my parting shot would be no matter which side of this coin you're on, if you're on the I need a mentor, but no one's going to want to do it. Or if I got some experience, but I'm not perfect. I can't be a mentor. I want to invite you to not write yourself off. I want to invite you to lean into this, to evaluate the relationships you have in your life, and to think about a person or persons that you can ask and invite them in to play that mentor role in your life. I think that's just, it's such a profound area that's impacted me personally that I get sad at the thought of anyone that doesn't have that.
Yeah.
I really do.
No, I'd thought of it that way, but it would make me terribly sad to have not had that or had the opportunity to pour that into others.
Yes. Yeah. So I think I almost come as a pleading, yearning of like, please do what you can, and the invitation is still out there of if you need someone to, if you're stuck with this, if you need some help figuring this out, then let us know. We'd be happy to try to connect some dots and help you. But please find a mentor, or if you feel a nudge to be a mentor, go and be one. It'll make a world of difference.
That's awesome. All right, thanks, Taylor. This
Welcome.
has been good. We'll be right back next week,
Right here.
As you're up at the Cape campus talking about companionship. And
Yes,
it's going to be
Dave and Jonathan.
Yeah, and I've seen part of your draft, so I know we're going to have plenty on the cutting room floor because you've been right.
I'm getting
my
the
friend.
scissors out as we speak. I'm cutting.
Friends, I hope this has been helpful to you, and we will see you next time on the cutting room floor.
Bye.
Bye now.